On February 8, 2011, a memo leaked out of Nokia, 1,300 words, written by a chief executive who had been in the job for 5 months. It opened with a story about a man on an oil platform in the North Sea. He woke up one night from a loud explosion, which suddenly set his entire oil platform on fire. Inside the company, people read it as honesty. Outside, analysts read it as a signal. Both readings were correct. 3 days later, on February 11th, Stephen Elop stood on a stage in London and confirmed what the memo had been preparing everyone for. Nokia's own smartphone software was finished. From that point on, Nokia would build Windows phones. Almost every factual claim in that memo was right. That is the problem this video is about. To understand what the announcement cost, you have to understand what Nokia still was in February 2011. In the final quarter of 2010 alone, Nokia shipped 28.6 million smart devices. Not in a year, in 3 months. Nokia was not a company that had already lost. It was a company still shipping more smartphones than anyone else on the planet, quarter after quarter, while the story about its decline was being written around it. But the pressure was real, and Elop documented it with unusual precision. In the memo, he wrote that the first iPhone had shipped in 2007, and Nokia still did not have a product close to it. He wrote that Android had arrived just over 2 years earlier, and, his words, "This week they took our leadership." Then he wrote the sentence that has been quoted in strategy classes ever since. "Our competitors aren't taking our market share with devices. They are taking our market share with an entire ecosystem." That is not a panicked sentence. That is a correct diagnosis, written down before most of the industry had arrived at it. He was equally precise about Nokia's own software. Symbian, the operating system running almost every Nokia smartphone being sold that quarter, was, again his words, an increasingly difficult environment in which to develop. And MeeGo, the replacement Nokia had been building, got the most specific line in the whole document. "We thought MeeGo would be a platform for winning high-end smartphones. However, at this rate, by the end of 2011, we might have only one MeeGo product in the market." Hold that sentence for a second, because it is the strongest evidence in Elop's favor. He was right. The N9 was not just Nokia's only MeeGo phone of 2011, it was the only MeeGo phone Nokia ever shipped. February 11th, 2011. London. Nokia announced that Windows Phone would become its principal smartphone strategy. Microsoft's Bing would power search across Nokia devices. Nokia Maps would be folded into Microsoft services. Nokia's content store would move into Microsoft's marketplace. The definitive agreement was signed 10 weeks later, on April 21st. Now, and this is the part most tellings of this story skip, look at the decision from inside that room, using only what was known on that day. Nokia had 4 options. Keep Symbian. Nokia's own chief executive had written down that developers were finding it harder and harder to build for. An operating system that developers are leaving is an operating system with a fixed expiry date. Not a strategy, a countdown. Bet everything on MeeGo. By Elop's own count, that path produced 1 product by the end of 2011. And that count turned out to be exactly right. Betting the largest phone business in the world on a platform that would ship a single handset in 12 months is not caution. It is a much bigger gamble than the one Nokia actually took. Adopt Android. This is the option the internet has decided was obviously correct. It was not obviously correct in February 2011. Adopting Android would have made Nokia one hardware maker among many, competing on manufacturing scale and price against Samsung, which already had the manufacturing scale, the component supply, and the price. Nokia would have handed the software layer, the store, and the customer relationship to Google, and kept the part of the business with the thinnest margins. Take the Microsoft deal, a platform with no established flagship partner, so Nokia would be the flagship, money from Microsoft, search, maps, and store integration. a genuinely differentiated position in a market that was collapsing into two ecosystems. If you accept the premise that Nokia could not ship a competitive operating system in time, then Windows Phone was not the reckless choice. It was the reasoned one. And Nokia's own chief executive had just put the evidence for that premise in writing. So what went wrong? What went wrong was not what Nokia decided. It was when Nokia said it. The memo leaked on February 8th. The strategy was public on February 11th. Nokia's first Windows phone, the Lumia 800, was announced on October 26th and went on sale in mid-November. 279 days. For 279 days, anyone walking into a shop to buy a Nokia smartphone was buying a device running an operating system that Nokia's own chief executive had publicly described as a burning platform. And there was no alternative on the shelf. Not a better Nokia, not a cheaper Nokia, nothing. Here is what that did. Fourth quarter 2010, 28.6 million smart devices. First quarter 2011, the announcement lands mid-quarter, 24.2 million. Second quarter, the first full quarter after the announcement, 16.7 million, down 31% in 3 months. Third quarter, 16.8 million, flat, the floor, not a recovery. Fourth quarter, 19.6 million, and that last number goes up. So let's be honest about it, because it matters. The fourth quarter is the strongest retail quarter of the year for every phone maker, and by late January 2012, Nokia said it had sold well over 1 million Lumia devices in total. 1 million. Against 19.6 million smart devices shipped in that quarter alone. Which means the small lift at the end of 2011 was not Lumia arriving. It was Symbian, the platform Nokia had publicly buried, still doing almost all of the work. Across the full year, Nokia shipped 77.3 million smart devices, down 25% from 103.6 million the year before. 26.3 million fewer phones. Devices and Services, the division that made the phones, reported net sales of 17.9 billion euros, down 13%. Operating profit fell 75% to 575 million euros on a margin of 3.2%. The business did not stop being large, it stopped being profitable enough to fund its own transition. On September 3, 2013, Nokia announced it was selling substantially all of Devices and Services to Microsoft for 5.44 billion euros, 3.79 billion for the business, 1.65 billion for a 10-year patent license. The sale closed on April 25, 2014, and around 32,000 people transferred to Microsoft. Stephen Elop transferred with them, back to the company he had come from. There is already a name for part of this. In 1983, a computer maker called Osborne is widely said to have damaged sales of its current machine by talking publicly about the better one coming next. Historians still argue about how much that actually caused the company's collapse. But the name stuck, and the pattern is real. The Osborne effect. You announce the future, and the present stops selling. Nokia did something the Osborne effect does not cover. Osborne told its customers that something better was coming. Nokia told its customers that what they were holding had no future, and then did not put the replacement on a shelf for another 8 months. The Osborne effect is a gap between two products. This is a gap between an announcement and any product at all. So here is the test, and it works on any company making a platform transition. Measure the distance between the day you tell the market that your current product is finished and the day a customer can walk in and buy the replacement. Every unit of revenue inside that window, assume you do not earn. Nokia's window was 279 days wide. It cost 26.3 million phones. The memo has been taught for over a decade as an example of a leader telling the truth. It was the truth. Every hard sentence in it was accurate, and the strategy that followed was defensible, which leaves the harder question the Nokia case actually poses. Not whether a chief executive should be honest about a crisis, But who else is listening when they are, and how long they are asked to wait? Nokia's board accepted a decline it could see coming. 3 years earlier, another board did the exact opposite. It turned down $44.6 billion because it could not accept the decline it was looking at. That one's next.